Honorable sisters, brothers, and friends, well, I try to be myself, and this is the midweek happy hour of theology, and due to circumstances, forced to include definitely some of social science, and being blunt, military science. And really, when I present my videos, the only one I'm really concerned about is God judging me. So I try to say the truth, whether anybody likes it or not. Now, in the previous God's Day Divine Miracle by Christ sermon and service, was Divine Miracle 29, Christ cures a man of the dropsy. The religious lesson was that Christ again proves he is the Son of God, divine God in Christ, their divine power. He grants this man and cures him in front of his adversaries in the temple. Of course, then his adversaries didn't like the idea that the people then would follow him instead of the way they were doing things. And I'll get to that in a little while. So that's the brief review of the previous God's Day Sunday. Now, I'm forced to discuss critical issues. Let's go, I think, chronologically. The Jews went out of Egypt and went into the Sinai and were there for, I guess, about 40 years. But then they went from there to where the indigenous Palestinians lived and still live, because they wanted to then live there. Now, fast forwarding, the indigenous Palestinian people then, it's really their original land. But the Zionist is going to take over all they can by any means. Like what? Well, they bragged they were in on the strategy of going to war in such a way that they, backed by the U.S., they know they would win. And then take over instead of the little land. I and others said, yeah, let them have their little peaceful land of the Holocaust victims and maybe one or two more. The Zionists now figure they can expand and take whatever they can. Well, the nations of the world, the UN, so the Zionists said, well, they have the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Who decided to give Israel all that land in the first place? How clever the British. Who said they had the authority to decide what the nations would be in their boundaries? So the British did it in such a way that there had to be confrontation. And so the Zionists now are in a position where they want to take over all of that and force the Palestinians out. They won't recognize Palestinians, their land. What hypocrisy. Well, the nations of the world and the UN says, oh, you got to sign a peace treaty, and there'll be, Israel and Palestine. Well, I put forward a program that was really good. They could live together and should and still can. But to my surprise, who really stopped that? The Zionists. Because I said you put a double fence, a nice high, see-through, economical double fence with a road between them and UN patrols, and they have their own little peaceful country. The Arabs over there living, they can't come over and have any consternation. No necessary weapons of mass destruction by Israel, because then the Arabs will want that. Weapons of mass destruction also. No need for armies. They can live in peace. The Zionists says, no, do that, they're going to then be limited, and they want to take over all of that area. You understand? No double fence. Or they build a wall because they say now, all right, we'll agree you have what's on the other side of the wall, and they keep what's the area that they want to say is theirs when it's not. Now, am I exaggerating? No. Let's look at the true facts. The Zionists here are powerful in the U.S. They even brag in Israel that they can do here what they want them to do from Israel here. Like one fellow, like they stood up and said that if Israel is at war with a country, the U.S. then is automatically at war with them. Say what? You mean to say if they practice genocide against a certain country and there's a conflict, U.S. is at war with them, so they use the big U.S.A. to force them to have genocide and murder off these people? That's how... what hypocritical farce the Zionists are. And I'll get a little more to what they really are, in my opinion, and maybe others. So what did they do? Well, the U.S. told them don't go more than a certain area. And the U.S. put a monitor ship there for themselves in the UN. What did the Zionists do? They sunk that ship and killed the Americans on it. Said, oh, we made a mistake. No, now they admit, they said, well, they shouldn't have, and they sent money for those families. Well, the U.S. sends the money over the table, and they get a lot of money under their table. Like that Madoff robbed all he can, even from Jewish people, even from the Jewish blind charities. Goes under the table to Israel. That's number one. The Zionists. Understand? Am I exaggerating? No. They had, they sunk that ship. They had to have the president sign a peace treaty for the two Israels, and he was shot by who? A Zionist. It was a U.S.A. fella. True fact. Exaggerating? No. The nations of the world and UN says, look, you've got to show up, and this time show up and sign. All right, they're going to show up. The night before, Zionists dressed as Arabs went into a synagogue where there were women and children and murdered them. True, absolute true fact. One of the young men there said when they started to kill these women and children, he says he just couldn't do it. So after they killed the women and children were leaving, they looked at him and says, hey, so he began to feel that maybe he was in trouble because he wouldn't do that. So he figured that they would kill him. So he took and escaped, and they chased him. He got to Canada. They tried to kill him in Canada. He just barely got out, came to the U.S., and he was on TV. I saw him at least twice. Absolute true fact. He said he was there. That's what they did. They dressed as Arab, killed the women and children. So the next day, he could say, peace. How come we signed a peace treaty? Look what they did. They killed women and children in our synagogue. That's war. We're at war. So they went at war in order to expand more and practice their genocide. Absolute true fact. That's the Zionist. The worst in the history of the world. Well, what are these people that in the U.S. they propagandize it's the Christian and Jews? No, as far as they're concerned, it's the Jews and the suckers. If you look at it, most of their really killing and genocide is on a Christian Sunday, just this past Sunday. Isn't that a true fact? Now, let's look at it. They are a theocracy, strict. You can't do anything, be anybody unless you belong to that Zionist, that they have the control. Zionism is political, overt, to take as much as they can, any way they can. And, of course, the Arabs are theology. Still possible, do it my way with a double fence, no weapons of mass destruction, no army. Zionists want the Gaza out of there into the Sinai. Hey, you came from the Sinai. That's their indigenous land. They live there in peace. You go back to the Sinai. No. We have done where let's see what these people really are. Let's say they are chosen. Who chose them? They chose themselves. All countries in their history say they are chosen for that area. What did Christ say? He says they are not the people of God. I repeat with emphasis. He says they are not the people of God. You have to believe in Christ, be a Christian, to believe in God and the Son of God, their divinity. Then you are a Christian, as St. Peter did and started in Rome. And Peter, and then St. Peter, St. Paul, all the disciples became apostles. Isn't that correct? Then Christ said, yeah, they are of the people of God. Well, what are these Zionists then? What people are they? Well, let's look at their Old Testament. Old Testament says there's evil spirits. A man was couldn't walk because his parents or him sinned. He had an evil spirit. All they talk about is evil spirit, the devil and evil spirits. Well, it was the devil there. Yeah, the devil came among the Jews there, right? And tempted God, challenged God. Where was the devil? Among those tribes of the Jews that now the Zionists are in control of. These same believe only in the Old Testament. They won't accept the New Testament. When I get the Bible, the first thing I do is to tear out the Old Testament and throw it away. Doesn't make me exactly popular or liked by them. Anything I want to know, Christ will have said and proved it. And proof is, if they are not the people of God, as Christ said, then who are they people of? But according to them, from what I read, all of the devil hear spirits and devil hear that because they're lame or blind or something. The devil showed up among the Jews there in their tribe. That's where the devil is. It appears that they are the people of the devil. That's what it sure appears like. No. They say that any plane or anything that comes, encroaches, they can shoot it down. It's their land, when it isn't. Now let's get to the other critical issue of the people of the Republic of Eastern Ukraine. Those people say that the only reason that the Kiev Killers took over is because they knew in the national election, which was due within a year, they wouldn't win. At best, they could only have the Western Ukraine, and there would be the Republic of the Eastern Ukraine. But the shadow government's powerful in the U.S. The provocateurs, shadow governments in the U.S. that run and pay and control the provocateurs, shadow government in Europe, they want to be into that Russian area, into their border, and kind of nice into Russia, and that's what they want. So they're figuring ways to have like a Pearl Harbor. Like the Jews jumped up and down taking a film, already were there, ready to take a film of a Pearl Harbor when the plane hit they got a Pearl Harbor against the Arabs. So they're trying to have a Pearl Harbor against Russia. That's a true fact. The provocateurs tell the plane to go a certain way, certain time, and then dive, lower their elevation. Those people are having planes come at them, lower elevation to try and murder them. Isn't that true facts? So they are not rebels or insurgents. They are the Republic of Eastern Ukraine. They say so, and I second that. Thank you.